we're wronged, the desire for revenge and retribution seems natural. On the other hand, forgiveness seems impossible and even unnatural. But it's in forgiveness that we find the way to freedom. A story is told of a woman in Rwanda a few years after the genocide. One awful day in 1998, soldiers came to her village and took her 19-year-old son out into a field. There, they shot and killed him, even though he was innocent of any crime. His mother tells of her bitterness towards the soldiers afterwards. She prayed, "God, why do people kill? And why my son? Why?" That night she had a dream. She saw a vision of a house on a bridge. A road led from where she stood onto the bridge to heaven on the other side. On the house was a sign saying, "The house of your enemy." Next day, she drew the vision in her diary, and as she did, its meaning became clear. The way to heaven is through the house of your enemy. From that moment on, she began praying for the man who'd murdered her son. It was only 2 months later that the killer, overwhelmed with the burden of guilt, arrived at her home to confess his crime and ask her forgiveness. Can you imagine how she felt? Amazingly, this woman opened her door and welcomed the killer into her home. She embraced him and fed him. Then later, after hearing his story, she accepted him into her family. Effectively, she adopted her son's killer. What a powerful story. Many would say that the actions of this brave Rwandan lady were unnatural. Most of us find it hard to forgive at the best of times. Our natural inclination is to repay evil for evil. However, this lady was living by a different set of values. She understood the importance of forgiveness as the way to freedom. The path to heaven's kingdom was through the house of her enemy. Retribution and payback would never stop the cycle of violence and hatred. Jesus taught us that it is because we have been forgiven, we can now forgive others. Forgiveness flows through us and sets others free. But the corollary is also true. If we don't forgive others, we can't receive God's forgiveness. If we hold on to wounds and grudges, we become bound by them and we end up suffering more. Forgiveness carries the power to bring healing and set us free. On a practical level then, how do we forgive? For the Rwandan woman, it started with a decision. I doubt whether she felt any kindness towards her son's killer at first. But as she responded to the voice of the Holy Spirit, praying for him, releasing him, and entrusting justice to God, God's supernatural love and mercy filled her heart. She experienced God's forgiveness for herself and was then able to pass it on to others. Forgiveness begins with the choice to forgive. It's not easy. It goes against everything in our hearts. But that's where the supernatural comes in. As we choose to forgive our enemies, God enables us by His Spirit and we experience heaven's realities. The story of this incredible woman doesn't end there. Since she adopted her son's killer, she has told the story all over the country and even to the United Nations. Her example has inspired many to work for peace in Rwanda. One act of forgiveness not only set her free, it set her perpetrator free, and then countless others across the land. The truth of Jesus' teaching remains. May her decision to forgive inspire ours. Hey, thanks for tuning into Everyday God Conversations. For more on having your own God Conversations, go to godconversations.com.